And a big piece of my activities are explaining the complexities of delivering commercial software to 500 million users. It's not as simple as, you know what, I'm just going to go write the code, compile it, and post this to some random website. So it's having a relationship means that you can then, on an ongoing basis, have dialogue about how best to protect customers. And for me, the goal is to coordinate the release of vulnerability details and the update. And this really is then the transition into security response. In the past, we released a patch whenever it was ready. Today, we're in a different world. We have a well-defined process, both for managing the monthly releases as well as emergency incident response. The all-up goal is to protect customers. It's a formalized process. And as I mentioned, the team within the MSRC, the security response team, is responsible for standards and enforcement across all products at Microsoft. On the monthly side, it starts with the report of the vulnerability. We triage that, create the fix, start testing. We're in continual dialogue with the security researchers. We update our development practices. As I mentioned, we go back and do root cause analysis to see what broke, what should have been there, what did we miss, how did we miss this. We then create content, both in the form of security bulletin or security advisories, as well as making sure that these are easily deployable. And then there's a coordinated release on second Tuesday of every month. We do have this other thing called SIRP, the Software Security Incident Response Plan. This was initially formulated as an outgrowth of Blaster and Slammer, where we didn't have as formal or as rigorous a process for how do you actually respond in an emergency. This also has well-defined phases. We watch, and it starts also with, okay, we're made aware that there's a problem, either through posting on a news group or some other mechanism. We watch, we say, okay, what is actually going on out there? How big is the problem? How bad is it? There's a pagers start going off immediately. Mobilization. We figure out what other partnerships we need to go start communicating with. Development teams are immediately on board, and then again through the resolve phase. So that's enough about the overall, the theoretical. I want to make sure that I actually talk about how exactly this looks, what the results are. So I've got two case studies, one on Windows Vista. Mine is a pretty high-level overview. If you want in-depth on Windows Vista, come see John Lambert's talk at 10:15. The other case study is really on WMF from December, also sometimes known as WMF, WTF. So for Windows Vista, it starts with secure design and architecture. Our overall approach here was to find and fix problems, to use proven techniques to find and fix problems before we shipped, and apply that broadly across the whole product. It's a huge product. We weren't going to be able to pen test security into it. We knew that. We needed to automate this and use new engineering processes and standards. I've got a comparison for Windows XP and Windows Vista and how this actually looked. So in Windows XP, there was training. We asked teams to do threat models. We did component level reviews. The code was written. It was code reviewed by a buddy, and then it was checked into WinMain. In Windows, and then across all code with Windows XP, there was also security bug tracking, and there were automated code analysis tools that were used. In Windows Vista, we've expanded upon all of that. We have more training, and then we have what we call quality gates to ensure that all code that migrated into the source code tree actually met certain standards. From a security perspective, some of those security basics, that security quality gate, was that you had to run prefast, the automated static code analysis tool. There were banned APIs. We said no longer can you use about 120 APIs, and that if you've got those in your code, you have to go and change those. We also had to do SAL annotations, structured annotation language. This is anytime there was a memory allocation in the code, the developer had to go in and annotate that code with a reference for exactly how big that allocation was supposed to be. The beautiful thing about this is that that actually helps the tools get smarter. We also had quality gates around privacy and reliability. So, and in addition to security bug tracking and prefix, we also did threat models across every feature in Windows Vista. Weak crypto removal, service hardening, additional mitigations, whether these are in the form from a compiler in the form of /GS, privacy review, as well as applying SDL to third-party code. There's a lot of third-party code that actually ships in Windows as binary, or where we also have source. So SDL has applied to those as well. So that applies across all features. We then also took a look at what are the especially high-risk things. What has a connection to the internet? What accepts anonymous data? And in those, we actually did in-depth design and attack surface review, in-depth threat models, penetration testing. There were numerous security consulting companies that have worked over the last 8 months on pen testing and feature reviews for Vista. That was very high level on Windows Vista. If you really want the in-depth story, stay for John's talk. So WMF. I initially gave this presentation in February, and WMF was still fresh in everyone's mind. And there was a lot of talk about, guys, you know, there were third-party fixes available very shortly thereafter. What's up with you guys? You know, researchers on the outside are faster, smarter, better than the engineers on the inside. This slide is the high-level one, and then I have a bit more detail on the next one. Things I want to highlight here are that from December 27th to January 5th, that was essentially the time frame that we're looking at here. We first noticed it on the news groups on the 27th. Teams were immediately assembled. Pagers went off, and teams were assembled, and we figured out exactly what the problem was, where the fix was. We started outreach to partners to help with AV signatures and other mitigations. We also started identifying which sites actually were distributing malicious WMF files and issued takedown notices for those. And then by the time we were done, we also did go back and say, okay, so how did we miss this one? And what improvements can we make in the future? So it was within a day that the team actually had identified exactly what the problem was, had coded the fix, and was smoke testing a buddy build of this. But in between that day and when we actually released, there was a lot of testing that went on and a lot of validation of the fix that went on. The biggest problem with this is usually application compatibility. That's why it's like I was worried about that in the IIS days. We ran, not only did we do regression testing on the WMF file itself, but we also did compatibility testing across 400 applications. But the biggest problem really when you release these, the thing that really bites you the most is the line of business applications. Those are the ones that are more complex and are least predictable. So we do have a program called the Security Update Validation Program, where where a patch is given out to a select set of customers that have a environment for testing. And it was actually, so that was how we achieved broad line of business application compatibility testing there. The other aspect here was that deployment tools, we needed to make sure that WMF was actually deployable. And there are 30 plus languages that Windows gets localized into. Each one of those packages needed to be released in parallel. I am just about out of time, and I'm at the end of my deck. So the things that I want to highlight for you are that, as I mentioned at the beginning, we went to the doctor. We got some pretty strong feedback from the doctor. In this case, the doctor really was the security community that gave us a pretty strong message about where we were going or where we needed improvement. I want to highlight that we have really made a lifestyle commitment here. We're still going to the gym. We still like it. And in fact, we've turned that corner. You know, there are times when you're going to the gym and you say, I don't really like my trainer. He makes me work too hard, or he's too aggressive, or, you know, it's pushing me too hard. I think I'll fire that one and get a different one. You know, we don't have the luxury of firing the security community and getting a new trainer. And that's okay, because we actually are now seeking out the community so that we get the feedback as early and as positively as possible. The other thing I'll highlight is that it's not rocket science. Your company could do this too. Anybody could do this. It takes commitment. I think the key thing is commitment at the executive level and a strong centralized team that has the ownership and the accountability to go drive change. Last thing I'll highlight is we're listening. Give us feedback. There are Windows Vista DVDs out by the Microsoft booth in the lobby. Go ahead, pick one up, take it home, take it for a spin, send us some feedback. We do have, like I said, this wasn't a highly technical talk. The next ones are, in fact. Abalade is going to give you a tour of the new TCP/IP stack. He said that this was going to be a whirlwind tour through the debugger. Adrian Marinescu is going to talk about Windows Vista heap enhancements. Wi-Fi, opening the kimono. That will be, you'll hear multiple references there to, you know, here's what we learned. Here's what Dino and Shane came and talked to us about at BlackHat. Here's how that's actually ended up in the product. IE7, and of course my favorite of all is John Lambert's talk about Windows Vista security engineering. So with that, I'm done. If you've got security vulnerabilities, I would remind you that secure@microsoft.com is the great place to send that information. I do have a couple of minutes for questions, if anybody's got any. With that, I thank you, though. Yes? Sorry, could you speak up?